What is good, everybody? My name is Dylan Spalding. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to listen to this audio version of this interview. And we are joined here today with a very special guest. He is the IndyNXT driver for HMD Motorsports with Dale Coyne Racing. He finished with six top fives and two wins at the Detroit race and Road America this season in IndyNXT in his first full-time season. And he'll also be racing this weekend for the CrowdStrike Racing team by APR in the LMP2 class at Road Atlanta this weekend in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Man, that was a lot to say there, but without further ado, man, we are joined with Nolan Siegel. Nolan, thanks so much for taking some time, man. Here to talk to you today, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
No worries, no worries. Excited to get to talk to you. Obviously, covering IMSA and stuff. I'll try to have some IMSA questions, but obviously we'll talk a little bit as well about your IndyNXT career so far after year number one. So I kind of want to begin things off here. How excited are you this weekend to be at Road Atlanta? You'll be with CrowdStrike Racing, as I mentioned, in the LMP2 class. So how excited are you to be able to attack it again with CrowdStrike Racing, your third race with them, and get back going again here with Road Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's a great team, great group of people. George Kurtz and Ben Hanley have both done fantastic jobs in all the races I've done with them, and we all get on really well. So we have a good time, and yeah, I'm excited to get back to it. Road Atlanta is one of my favorites as well. So it's going to be a tough race. It always is really, really difficult, but that makes it more special if you're able to do well there.
Oh, definitely, for sure. It's definitely one of the more iconic tracks on the schedule for sure. And having raced in a couple of endurance races so far this season, obviously winning at Watkins Glen as well. For you, what is that preparation like heading into a weekend like this? It's a little bit different than a sprint race. 10 hours, you had the 6 hours for the Glen, you had the 12 hours at Sebring. So each one kind of has its own unique things and different things for you. Like, what is that preparation like from a physical and mental standpoint?
Yeah, it's different for sure because a lot of the race is more about, one, survival, and two, positioning yourself for the end of the race. So rather than being, flat out all the time, you need to think about it strategically and, be a little bit more focused on making it to the end and positioning yourself for the end rather than, just passing the car ahead of you at, immediately. So, but I've been in endurance racing mode for a little bit now. I was with CrowdStrike in their GT3 car last weekend. We won the Indy 8 hour, which was really cool for George and I. So yeah, we're looking to do it again. And I think the mindset stays the same from this past weekend and going into next weekend for both of us.
Yeah, you've raced in a lot of different cars. You've obviously raced primarily in IndyNXT and in the IndyCar type of cars, and then you obviously have some experience with prototypes and GT cars. Those experiences, how do they correlate? Like, what are you able to take from each one that you can use towards each experience? Because I imagine there's certain things that are probably similar. There's probably things that are a little bit different. Like, what are you able to take away from those experiences that you can use for yourself as a driver?
Yeah, they're all very different for sure. But I think in my career, I want to make it to IndyCar. That's the main goal. But at the same time, I want to keep doing this sports car racing. And I think when you do endurance racing, you have to drive different types of cars and you have to be able to adapt to those cars quickly. So I think the more different cars that I can drive will set me up better for the rest of my endurance racing career.
For sure, for sure. And talking about, I want to take a step back with that Watkins Glen win for you. I mean, to be able to win on such an iconic track with CrowdStrike Racing, so to have previous success already with the team and to be able to win a race like that, how special was that for you as a driver to be able to win at a track that's really has so much history, especially in the sports car world?
Yeah, it was extremely special. It was my first IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship win. And to do it in Watkins Glen, it's, one of the big four races in the US in North America, right? One of the biggest endurance races in the world. So to be able to win with CrowdStrike there was really special. And I believe it was all of our first, it was Ben's first win there, George's first win there. I believe it was the team's first win there. So we were all really excited about it. And it was a good kind of first win for the team in in North America, first win for Algarve. So we're looking to keep it going.
Yeah, and to see the LMP2 class, especially which you'll be racing in this weekend, to see it grow for next season, obviously you mentioned your goal is to get into IndyCar and to race full time in the IndyCar scene, if you will. But to see the LMP2 class expand and to see that prototype class expand for 2024 and what's to come in IMSA and such, and even just in sports car racing in general, how excited are you to see a lot of this growth that's happening within the sport and to see a lot of the developments that are happening? How excited are you to be able to be a part of that?
I'm super excited to be a part of it. It's, I think it's shaping up to be another kind of golden age in motorsports, and everything has been so competitive. IndyNXT this last year was one of the biggest fields in history. IndyCar is one of the biggest fields in history, and now to see LMP2 growing and the GT field, GTP, it's really exciting. And yeah, it's an honor to be in these endurance races with such amazing teams and drivers, and the competition is super strong. So it makes all of the success even more special for me.
With this being your first year in Indy Next, you got a chance to race with HMD Motorsports with Dale Coyne Racing, and you obviously had a one-off race in 2022 that kind of got the ball rolling, if you will, with that relationship. What
Mhm.
has made this team the right fit for you, Nolan? Like, what has been able to what has made this team kind of home for you and being able to race with them? What has made that special for you?
Yeah, the team's been super welcoming. The first race I did with them, it already felt like a family and like I was, a part of the team, which was really nice. And um, the group of people on my car specifically, obviously it's a huge team running 9 cars at the beginning of the year. So um, having my group around me, my spotter, my engineer, I've known them for years, and we do lots of stuff outside of the track together, and we're just good friends. And then the mechanics as well, we go out to dinner, we get to know each other, and it just makes it feel like a more cohesive team. And we just have a good time together, and it makes it fun, and every weekend is fun. And I think that's what makes us successful.
Yeah, and only being 18 as well. I mean, you're such a young driver in your career. How important is it to be able to learn from these guys and be able to take away stuff who, have a lot of experience in the sport, whether that be in sports car racing or Indy Next? I can imagine for you as a young driver, it probably truly does benefit in terms of your racing and your development as well.
Oh, it's huge. In Indy Next, I think that experience comes more from the engineers and the team side. So getting to learn from, not just my engineer, but the other 8 engineers that are in the trailer is massive. They all have lots of IndyCar experience, sports car racing experience. And then on the sports car side, I've driven with amazing co-drivers throughout my career. I've driven with, this past weekend, Colin Brown, who is one of the most successful sports car drivers in history. Ben Hanley, same thing, right? LMP1 driver, IndyCar driver. So these guys have taught me a huge amount, and just getting to be a part of the weekend with them is really beneficial for me. I can see their mindset and figure out how they go about it.
Going from that first race at St. Pete to the last race at Laguna Seca, for you as a driver, and especially your first full-time season, what have you been able to learn about yourself as a driver, especially in what is you mentioned a very competitive Indy Next series, and it's only going to continue to grow and even be more competitive.
Yeah, I learned a huge amount, and we had a lot of really great weekends and a lot of not so great weekends, and I think the bad weekends is where I learned the most, for sure. I found that it was super important to just stay calm, because these weekends don't always go your way, and you have mechanical problems, you get taken out, it happens. So being able to stay calm is extremely important for me, I found. And I think the team around me is a huge part of that, because we all kind of can help each other mentally throughout the weekend. So yeah, having that support group has been, I think, the most important thing for me.
To be able to grab those wins at Detroit, a track that was brand new on the schedule, everybody was still learning it, and then to grab a track at Road America, another very iconic sports car track amongst a lot of the series. How important were those wins in terms of kind of the timing of it? It was very early on in the season, and for you being such a new driver, I can imagine that had to have been a big confidence booster heading into the remainder of the season. Be able to grab those wins and almost kind of state your claim, if you will, into the series.
Yeah, it was a big confidence booster. And I think as a rookie, you go into a lot of these weekends on the back foot just because other people have raced on that track in that car before. So Detroit going into it, I knew that that was going to be one of my best chances because it was an even playing field. And on that even playing field, we were super, super strong. So I think that showed that I think maybe places where other people were better maybe just came down to a lack of experience for me in that car on that track. So Road America was a place that I've raced a ton in the past and I felt very confident at, and it was kind of the same thing. We went in and we're just immediately very strong. So now this year, that's a big confidence booster as well, because I've now, done a year in IndyNXT, raced all these places, and there's no one with more experience. So I think we'll be able to come out just as strong as we did in Detroit and Road America this year.
Yeah, looking at the schedule this season and seeing a lot of tracks return and obviously some fan favorites on the schedule. Are there any races for you that you're looking at potentially even doing like a double potentially? I know we got Detroit with the IMSA and IndyCar doubleheader. St. Pete's now going to have the VP Sports Car Challenge as well. Are those races where maybe that's something where you may want to try to do both IMSA and IndyCar on the same weekend? We've seen it before happen. Is that something that you would like to pursue potentially here with a lot of these races coming up?
Yeah, well, I would be open to it for sure. I haven't really thought about it or had any, offers to do that, but
Mhm.
if the opportunity presented itself, I would definitely love to do it, and we'll see what happens. But um, yeah, I'll figure it out and let you know. I would love to do that.
I like it. The never say never. I like that. I like that. And having raced a season with Indy Next, and some of the tracks are different than IMSA, and having raced some IMSA tracks as well, is there tracks that you feel like would suit for IMSA that maybe on the Indy Next schedule, maybe say like a Nashville, or even obviously Detroit got added in, or even for IMSA, Sebring. I mean, IndyCar does all their testing there. Is that, what tracks would you think would benefit, be a nice addition to the schedules?
Yeah, I think, from an IndyCar side, I don't know that there are any tracks that I would put IMSA on that they're not already racing at.
Mhm.
Just with the multi-class racing, I think some of the smaller tracks would be quite difficult. But on the IMSA side, we do Watkins Glen and Road Atlanta, which are two of my absolute favorites, and I think would be incredible in IndyCar. So I'd love to see IndyCar go back to Watkins Glen. That would be my first pick, and then Road Atlanta second.
Yeah, it would definitely be nice to see a race up in New York for sure. And
Hmm.
especially up in Watkins Glen, those people they are huge, huge racing fans up there. So it would definitely be a sight to see for sure. Kind of continuing, just throughout your IndyCar career, again, you've had so many stops along the way, and you've been able to experience and encounter so much early on in your career. What has been the most changing part about the IndyCar, Indy Next, if you will? What has been the most changing part about the sport that you've experienced so far in your career? I mean, things are constantly developing. You see now the new hybrid cars are going to be introduced for IndyCar next season. What is the biggest change that you've seen that you've kind of had to continue to grow and learn on?
Yeah, I think, it's tough because there are obviously huge changes in the cars themselves and the technology,
Mhm.
which is really cool to see from an engineering standpoint. But I think the growth in just the competition in all of these series has been the biggest change. And, you look at everything through the road to Indy Next, IndyCar, IMSA, everything has grown so much. And the competition is so, so fierce this year and in the past couple years, and I think that it'll continue to grow. So um, that's the big thing, and I would say that that's what affects me as a driver the most.
Yeah. Obviously finishing third in your first season is such a great accomplishment, and obviously the goal is to win that championship and to be able to get to that next point in Indy Next. But for you, heading into the off season, what are you hoping to improve with your team on in terms of, you as a driver with, the car itself, learning more about the car and, after a St. Pete race that, last couple laps didn't really go your way, you had
Mhm.
that pass on you, I can imagine there's got to be a big chip on your shoulder heading into that first race, kind of wanting to rewrite the books, if you will, in that Indy or in that St. Pete race.
Yeah, there are a few that are that way. I think St. Pete, Detroit race one, need to win the doubleheader this year. Barber could have won. There are so many that I feel like just kind of slipped out of our grasp. So we're going to work on perfecting the car. I'm going to work on perfecting my driving, trying to make fewer mistakes. And yeah, I think a big thing for me is maximizing qualifying as well, because we started a lot of races kind of from the midfield, and our race pace was always super strong, and I was able to go from the midfield to the front. But I think it would be a lot easier if we could start up front. So that's a big focus for me, is going to be maximizing the peak of the tire and qualifying. So a lot to work on, but we're always learning, and we've got a long off season to fix all of our problems from last year.
Well, I want to jump back into IMSA real quick before we wrap things up here real quick. Obviously looking at this field heading into this weekend, I mean, being only 18 and being a young driver, seeing some of the stars, if you will, not only of IndyCar, but you have a guy like a Jensen Button. A lot of the obviously you got Tom Bloomquist who will be coming over to IndyCar next season. I mean, it is this field this weekend is loaded from top to bottom at Road
Hmm.
Atlanta. To be able to be a part of that and to be able to drive against these really top, guys at their sport right now, how much does that help you as a driver to be able to be around those guys and be able to drive against these guys and in terms of your driving, style, how does that help you as a driver to be able to drive against some of these greats, if you will, in the sport?
Yeah, I learn a ton. I get to follow these guys on track, and I get to hang out with them off track, which is really fun, and it's a cool experience for me. In IMSA, I feel like everyone's more laid back and everyone's really friendly, and it's just a cool way to socialize with people that have been my heroes for a long time. And yeah, I think it's really beneficial for me, and I can learn a ton from them. It just raises the professionalism of the series to that next level, and I have to adhere to that as well. So it helps me learn how I need to conduct myself off track, how I need to drive on track, and overall it just helps me kind of learn about what I need to do to become then someday.
One thing that I think Indy Next does, or one thing that Indy Next does, is something that I noticed, especially at St. Pete, is the time finishes. Is something that sometimes happens in Indy Next, and obviously with IMSA, it's timed races. How
Hmm.
much of that translates over? I know it's not as much time, but it still has to be like you don't know how many laps a 5 minute period might give you. So I can imagine at least from that aspect, it does give you a little bit of a brief peek, if you will, into that kind of sprint endurance timed racing, if you will. How much of that does help you and translate over to IMSA?
Yeah, I think you know it's different in the sense that in Indy Next, it's still a sprint race. There's still really there's strategy, but there's no pit stop strategy to it,
Mhm.
right? So um I would say the timed races in IMSA are more of a they change the pit stop strategy, right? The strategy for the actual strategist,
Yeah.
rather than the driver. So I don't know that really translates, but um, I'll take whatever advantage I can get, I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure on that. I know with obviously with IMSA, as you mentioned, it's kind of weird because again, as you mentioned, there is really no pit strategy at that point in the race. So I get where you're coming from on that for sure. Well, Nolan, I want to just say thank you again for jumping on. I want to close things out by asking, what is next for you following Road Atlanta? Obviously, you got the off season coming up. What does that schedule look for you in terms of testing and in terms of getting prepared for the upcoming season here in 2024? And how excited are you to be able to jump back into your IndyNXT here coming up soon?
Yeah, we've got the following weekend is the Chris Griffiths test here in Indianapolis.
Okay.
which I'm looking forward to. I haven't been in the IndyNXT since Laguna, so it's been a little while, and it's a super fun car. So looking forward to jumping back in it, and we'll see. Hopefully I can do some more endurance racing. Still trying to find a ride for the Asian Le Mans series. We'll see what happens there. We've got Daytona before the IndyNXT season starts back up again. So, a lot going on. Looking forward to getting back in the race car.
Yeah, the racing world never stops, even though the seasons stop. I'll say that much for sure. But Nolan, I got to say thank you so much again for jumping on with me, taking some time to do this interview. Good luck this weekend at Road Atlanta, and excited to see what you could do with CrowdStrike Racing, who is actually only 100 points out of the championship. So
Yeah.
still a shock for you guys here heading into this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. That's the goal. So, yeah, thank you.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No worries.